The observation deck smelled like burnt circuits and disappointment. Three instructors huddled around a cracked display screen, watching the same footage for the 15th time that cycle. On the screen, a Borlax warrior, 9 feet of muscle and armored plates, crawled exactly 12 meters into the gravity section before his legs buckled. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the speakers. Instructor Rolf clicked off the feed with one of his forefingers. His species had survived in methane swamps and called themselves tough. Class Alpha X had broken 6 of his best students in 2 cycles. 47 species, he said to no one in particular. 3 years, 0 completions. His colleague, a floating Mistral named Finn, pulsed a dull orange color. That meant agreement in her language. She drifted toward the massive window overlooking the course itself. From up here, it looked almost peaceful. Just a series of connected chambers and corridors stretching for 2 kilometers through the station's lower decks. Peaceful was a lie. The first section alone had hospitalized 200 candidates. The gravity multipliers built into the floor could simulate anything from 0G to 8 times standard. Most species trained at 1, maybe 1.5 times their home gravity. The course started at 2 and climbed from there. Section 2 was worse. Temperature control gone mad. The environmental systems would superheat the air to boiling, then flash freeze it cold enough to crack chitin. Back and forth, every 30 seconds, no warning. A Threx warrior had lost all 4 of his breathing tubes in their last month. He'd never fight again. Rolf didn't like to think about Section 3. The acidic marsh had cost him a promising student named Harrow. The kid had survived barely, but the scars covered half his body now. All because some idiot engineer thought soldiers needed to train in caustic environments. New arrivals today, Finn's translator device announced. 18 cadets. Mixed species. Rolf pulled up the roster on his wrist display. The usual spread. 2 Quarren siblings, both veteran line fighters. A Drachner scout with exceptional marks from basic training. 5 Helgram shock troops built like living tanks. He scrolled past the technical readouts and biological specs, not really caring anymore. Then he saw it. 1 human, he almost laughed. Humans were Category 7 on the danger scale. Softworlders. Their planet had decent gravity, sure, but nothing extreme. Comfortable temperatures. Plenty of water. They were in the middle of every chart. Not weak, not strong, just average across the board. This one was named Danny Wright. 16 standard years old. Height, average. Weight, average. Previous combat training. None listed, just something called high school wrestling, which sounded like a recreational activity. The human won't last 10 minutes, Rolf muttered. Finn pulsed yellow. Amusement. Remember the last one? Made it to Section 2 before the heat stress knocked him out. Medics said his kind can't regulate temperature well. Rolf did remember. The human had been confident, too. Talked about his species' endurance, their adaptability. Then he collapsed in the thermal corridor, skin bright red, mumbling about water. Down in the staging area, the new cadets were gathering. Rolf watched through the cameras as they sized each other up. The Helgram warriors stood in a cluster, comparing armor configurations. The Drachner scout stretched her 6 limbs, testing her flexibility. Everyone looked ready. Everyone looked scared. The human stood off to the side, hands in his pockets. He wore standard issue training gear that looked too big on his frame. His hair was messy, brown, unremarkable. He was looking at the entrance to the course with the same expression someone might use when deciding what to eat for lunch. One of the Helgram warriors, a massive specimen named Gorth, walked over to the human. The size difference was comical. Gorth's shoulder plates were level with the top of Danny's head. Softworlder. Gorth's voice rumbled through the speakers. You should quit now. Save yourself the medical bills. The human looked up at him. I'm good, thanks. The course has killed stronger beings than you. Turn back. Nah, I'm already here. Might as well try. Gorth made a sound like grinding stones. His species' version of laughter. Don't say I didn't warn you. Try not to embarrass your planet too badly. The human just shrugged. Rolf shook his head. The boy had no idea what he was walking into. None of them ever did. But at least the other species came from harsh worlds. The Hellgram evolved on a planet with crushing gravity and constant seismic activity. The Drakner homeworld had predators that hunted in the dark using thermal sense. Even a Quarren came from a place where the weather could turn deadly without warning. Earth? Earth was safe, comfortable, a garden world where humans built their cities and lived their soft lives. The warning klaxon sounded. All cadets moved to the starting line. The human took his place between a Quarren fighter and one of the Hellgram troops. He looked tiny next to them. Finn drifted closer to the observation window. Recording for medical review. Already running. Rolf confirmed. We'll need the footage for the inquiry. Inquiry, when a human gets hurt. His planet's embassy will want to know why we let a child attempt this. The final warning sounded. 3 tones descending. Every cadet tensed, muscles coiling, claws extending, breathing slowing into combat patterns. The human rolled his shoulders once like he was loosening up before gym class. The course entrance opened. The gravity field activated, and Class Alpha X claimed its next victims. The entrance corridor was deceptive. Flat floor, normal lighting, walls painted a neutral gray. It looked like any other training facility hallway. That lasted for exactly 10 meters. Then the gravity kicked in. Danny felt the change immediately. His feet suddenly weighed more. His arms hung heavier at his sides. The air itself seemed thicker, harder to move through. Around him, the other cadets reacted with various degrees of struggle. The Quarren fighter to his left grunted, his forelegs spreading wider to distribute the weight. His breathing got louder, more forced. Ahead, one of the Hellgram warriors was already slowing down, each step becoming deliberate and measured. Danny kept walking. It felt like he was wearing his backpack, the heavy one he used for hiking trips back home, loaded with camping gear and water. Annoying, but not exactly difficult, the gravity increased. Now it felt like he was carrying 2 backpacks. Maybe like that time, he and his cousin moved furniture up to a 3rd-floor apartment. His legs worked harder, his breathing picked up a bit. Still manageable. One of the smaller cadets, a Threx with crystalline skin, fell to his knees. The sound echoed through the corridor. 2 others stopped to help him, but the course rules were clear. You moved forward or you quit. There was no going back. The Threx tried to stand, failed, and slapped his emergency beacon. A door opened in the wall, and medical drones swarmed in to extract him. First casualty. 15 meters into the course, Danny walked past the scene, his steps steady but slower now. The gravity was still climbing. It felt like someone had strapped weights to every part of his body. His shoulders ached, his knees protested with each step. This was harder than hiking. This was like that football conditioning camp his friend had dragged him to, where the coach made them run sprints with resistance bands. Terrible, but survivable. Gorth, the Hellgram warrior who'd warned him earlier, was now crawling. All 4 of his arms scraped against the floor, his breathing coming in sharp gasps. His armor, designed to protect him, was now crushing him under its own weight. Soft worlder, he wheezed as Danny walked past. Ow! Danny didn't have a good answer. How was he supposed to know? This just felt like hard work, not impossible work. Like when he helped his dad dig the new irrigation ditch last summer. Brutal and exhausting, but you just kept moving until it was done. The gravity section ended at 200 meters. Danny's legs were shaking, his shirt soaked with sweat, but he was still on his feet. He looked back. Out of the 18 cadets who started, only 7 remained. The rest had either collapsed or hit their emergency beacons. Gorth was being pulled back by medical drones, his eyes wide with disbelief, and time to rest. The next section door opened. The temperature hit him like a wall. Hot. Seriously hot. The kind of heat that made the air shimmer and turned breathing into work. Danny's skin prickled instantly, sweat appearing on his forehead. The Drakner scout ahead of him screamed. Her scales were designed for her cool, dark homeworld. This heat was cooking her alive. She lasted 5 seconds before her beacon activated. Danny walked forward, squinting against the temperature. It reminded him of summer in Death Valley, where he'd worked for a month with his uncle's construction crew. That job site had been brutal, standing on black asphalt in 110-degree heat, moving materials, drinking water every 15 minutes just to stay conscious. This was worse, but not by much. Then the temperature dropped cold. Instant, shocking cold. The air went from oven hot to freezer cold in seconds. Danny gasped, his breath misting in front of his face. His wet shirt turned icy against his skin. This was like the winter his family's heater broke, and they waited 3 days for the repair guy. Wyoming in January, sleeping in layers, waking up to see frost on the inside of the windows. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. But he'd survived that, too. The temperature swung again. Hot. Then cold. Hot. Cold. Every 30 seconds, like clockwork point, 2 more cadets quit. One Quarren made it 20 meters before the rapid changes caused something in his biology to shut down. The other, a Hellgram, simply stopped moving and stood there until the safety systems pulled him out. Danny kept walking, jaw clenched, arms wrapped around himself during the cold phases, breathing shallow during the hot ones. His body screamed at him to stop, to rest, to please just make it end. But there was something familiar about this kind of suffering. It was every uncomfortable moment from back home compressed into one hallway. The altitude headaches from living in the mountains. The muscle burn from wrestling practice. The numb fingers from winter camping trips. Earth hadn't prepared him for this on purpose. Earth had just been Earth, and he'd lived there his whole life. The thermal corridor ended. Danny stumbled out, his core temperature confused, his body exhausted. 3 other cadets emerged with him. All of them were in worse shape, their biology not designed for such extreme shifts. The next door opened. The smell hit first. Acidic. Chemical. Wrong. Danny looked down at the obstacle ahead and felt his first real twinge of doubt. A marsh, filled with liquid that was definitely not water. It bubbled slightly, releasing vapor that made his eyes sting. Drones flew overhead, their targeting systems sweeping back and forth. One of the remaining cadets, a heavily armored Quarren, stepped into the liquid. His protective suit began to dissolve immediately. He roared in pain and rage, pushing forward anyway, making it halfway before his suit failed completely. Emergency beacon. Extraction. Danny looked at his own gear. Standard issue. Nothing special. He touched the liquid with one finger. It burned. Not enough to scar, but enough to hurt. Like touching a hot stove or getting splashed with cleaning chemicals. His skin turned red where the liquid touched it. He took a breath and waded in. The liquid came up to his knees. Every step was a new adventure in pain. The drones swooped down, firing training rounds that stung like angry wasps. He ducked, dodged when he could, took the hits when he couldn't. His exposed skin was turning raw and red. The pain was constant, angry, demanding attention. But pain was just information, right? That's what his wrestling coach always said. It told you something was wrong, but it didn't mean you had to stop. Danny pushed through the marsh, his teeth gritted, his eyes watering from the fumes. This was worse than anything back home. This was genuinely dangerous, but the exit was right there. Just a few more steps. He climbed out on the other side, his skin burning, his clothes partially dissolved, his whole body feeling like one giant bruise. Behind him, the last 2 cadets quit without even attempting the march. He was alone now. The course stretched ahead, empty and waiting. Danny Wright, 16 years old, average in every way, stood dripping with acid and sweat. And he kept walking. Medical sensors throughout the station were going haywire. Instructor Rawls stared at the display showing Danny's vital signs, convinced the equipment was broken. Heart rate, elevated but steady. Blood pressure, high but not critical. Core temperature, fluctuating but stable. Pain indicators, off the charts, but the human kept moving. This doesn't make sense, Rolf said for the 3rd time. He should be unconscious. His kind isn't built for this. Finn pulsed a dark red. Concern. Should we stop him? For his own safety. He hasn't hit his beacon. Protocol says we let him continue until he does. On the screen, Danny approached Section 4. The part where everyone broke. Not metaphorically. Literally. Bones, spirits, minds. Something always shattered in Section 4 at the vertical wall rose 30 meters into the darkness. Handholds were spaced across its surface, glowing faintly in the dim light. It looked almost peaceful, almost simple. Then the heating elements activated. The handholds began to glow red, then orange, then white hot. The air around the wall shimmered with heat. At the same time, the gravity in the climbing zone tripled. 3 times normal, making every movement a battle against invisible weight. Danny stood at the base of the wall, looking up. His hands were already burned and raw from the acid marsh. His muscles were screaming from the earlier gravity gauntlet. His body temperature was still trying to regulate after the thermal corridor that he reached for the first handhold. The heat seared his palm instantly. He jerked back, shaking his hand, swearing under his breath. The metal was hot enough to brand flesh. In the observation deck, Rolf pulled up the historical data. A Quarren had broken both legs falling from this wall. A Drachner had lost 3 fingers to thermal damage. A Helgram warrior had made it halfway up before the combined stress caused his hearts to fail. Plural. He had 3 hearts, and all of them quit. Danny tried again. This time he grabbed the handhold fast, using the momentum to pull himself up to the next one before the heat could do too much damage. Grab, pull, release. Grab, pull, release. Each movement was agony, each handhold a fresh burn. His technique was sloppy but effective. Rolf recognized it from a file. Wrestling. The human had learned to use leverage and quick movements to overcome stronger opponents. He was applying the same principle here. Don't fight the heat, just don't give it time to win. 0.5 meters up, 10 meters. 15. The gravity was crushing. Each pull-up took every bit of strength Danny had. His arms were on fire. His hands were leaving skin on the hot metal. His breathing was ragged and desperate. In the observation room, 3 more instructors had arrived, drawn by reports of the impossible. They watched in silence as the human climbed 20 meters. 25. Danny's movements were getting slower. The burns on his hands were serious now, the pain overriding his ability to grip properly. His arms shook with each pull. The gravity felt like someone was standing on his back, pushing him toward the ground. He stopped climbing. Hung there, breathing hard, his forehead pressed against the hot wall. He's done, one of the new instructors said. He made it farther than most, but he's finished. Rolf wasn't so sure. There was something about the way the human was breathing. Not panicked, not defeated, just thinking. Danny reached up and grabbed the next handhold differently. Instead of gripping it fully, he hooked his fingers over it, minimizing contact with the hot metal. The angle was awkward, the leverage poor, but it reduced the burning. He pulled himself up another meter. Then another. This wasn't technique anymore. This wasn't training. This was pure stubborn refusal to quit. The human's face was twisted in pain, his hands were leaving blood on the holds, his entire body was trembling. But he kept climbing 30 meters. The top. Danny hauled himself over the edge and collapsed on the platform, his chest heaving, his hands looking like they'd been cooked. He lay there for 10 seconds, 20, 30. Then he stood up. The next section entrance was right there. No rest period. No medical check. The course didn't care about fairness. Danny walked toward it, his legs unsteady, his burned hands held carefully away from his body. The door opened into darkness. Complete, absolute darkness. Not even emergency lighting. The kind of dark that made eyes useless. Danny stepped inside. The oxygen level immediately dropped. Not enough to suffocate, but enough to make every breath feel incomplete, like trying to breathe through a straw. His already exhausted body needed oxygen it couldn't get. The maze began. Walls appeared out of nowhere in the darkness, invisible until he walked into them. The floor was uneven, designed to trip and disorient. Sonic disruptors fired randomly, sending waves of nausea through his skull. This section had ended careers. A promising Drachner soldier had suffered permanent brain damage here when the oxygen deprivation lasted too long. Multiple cadets had developed lasting psychological trauma from the sensory deprivation. Danny felt his way along the wall, his burned hands sending fresh jolts of pain with each touch. The darkness was complete. The silence was broken only by his own breathing and the occasional sonic pulse that made his vision swim with colors that shouldn't exist. His hometown in Colorado was at 7,000 feet elevation. Growing up there meant growing up with less oxygen than sea-level cities. Every sports practice, every hike, every physical activity happened with 14% less oxygen than the standard atmosphere. The course had dropped oxygen to 14%. For Danny, it felt like home. His lungs worked harder, yes. His head felt light, yes. But his body knew this feeling. His blood knew how to carry oxygen efficiently because it had spent 16 years learning that he navigated the maze by touch and memory, his brain building a mental map despite the darkness. Left turn, straight right, straight left. The sonic disruptors made him stumble, but not fall. The darkness was scary, but not paralyzing to in the observation deck. A junior instructor whispered, "He's humming." It was true. Barely audible over the sound of his breathing, Danny was humming something. An old song, maybe. Something to keep rhythm, to stay calm, to remind himself that this was just another problem to solve. The maze exit appeared as a small rectangle of light. Danny walked toward it, his steps more confident now, his breathing steady despite the thin air that he emerged into normal light and normal oxygen. The change made him dizzy for a moment. He leaned against the wall, blinking, adjusting 0.5 sections down. One to go. The final section door was marked with warning symbols in 12 languages. Psychological conditioning. Sensory overload. Extreme physical stress. And no one had ever seen what was beyond that door while still conscious. Danny looked at his hands. They were ruined, burned, and bleeding. His body was a collection of pains, each one screaming for attention. His mind was fuzzy from exhaustion and oxygen deprivation. He walked through the door anyway, and Class Alpha X showed him what real hell looked like. The final section didn't ease into cruelty. It dove straight into it. Strobe lights fired in random patterns, blinding white alternating with complete darkness, so fast that Danny's eyes couldn't adjust. The frequency was calculated to trigger disorientation in 93% of known species. Sound blasted from every direction, screaming, roaring, grinding metal, explosions, all at volumes designed to cause pain, and the obstacles began that a wall shot out from the side. Danny barely ducked under it, the metal scraping across his back. Spikes emerged from the floor in patterns that changed every second. He jumped, twisted, his burned hands grabbing a support bar that appeared and disappeared in the strobing light. This section was called the Gauntlet of Despair in the official documentation. Unofficially, instructors called it the Nightmare Room. It combined every stress factor they could think of and cranked them all to maximum. Sleep deprivation simulation came from lights that pulsed at frequencies proven to disrupt brainwave patterns. The effect was like staying awake for 72 hours straight. Thoughts became sluggish, reactions slowed, reality started to feel distant and strange. Danny's vision was doing weird things. The strobing lights left afterimages that danced across his retinas. The walls seemed to move even when they weren't. His depth perception was shot, making every jump, every grab a gambled, swinging bar came out of nowhere. It caught him in the ribs, knocking the air from his lungs. He gasped, stumbled, fell to one knee. The sound of his sister's birthday party echoed in his head, screaming kids, loud music, chaos everywhere. And he almost laughed. This was worse than that party. But not by as much as it should be. He forced himself up. A platform extended from the wall, retracted before he could fully step on it. He jumped, caught the edge with his ruined hands, pulled himself up through pure determination and the muscle memory from hundreds of pull-ups during wrestling practice. The course record showed 6 attempts at this section. All 6 had ended in medical emergencies. 2 permanent psychological damage cases. 1 death that was covered up in the official reports. Danny didn't know any of that. He just knew that everything hurt, everything was loud, everything was designed to make him stop. Naturally, his brain did what it always did when things got hard. It got stubborn that a series of moving platforms appeared in the strobing light. They shifted position constantly, no pattern, no warning. Step wrong, and you fell 3 meters onto a floor designed to hurt without causing permanent damage. Probably. Danny stepped out onto the first platform. It tilted immediately, nearly throwing him off. He windmilled his arms, caught his balance, jumped to the next one. That one rotated. The next one was slick with something that might have been oil. His foot slipped. He went down hard, slamming his shoulder into the platform. Pain exploded through his body, adding to the collection of agonies he was already carrying. The platform started to retract into the wall. He rolled off, landed badly, felt something in his ankle protest loudly. Not broken. Probably not broken. Definitely not feeling good. The noise increased. The lights strobed faster. The air filled with smoke that stung his eyes and made breathing even harder than it already was done. In the observation deck. Instructor Rolf was standing now, his 4 hands gripping the railing. Every monitor showed vitals that should belong to someone unconscious or dead. The human stress hormones were at toxic levels. His pain receptors were firing so constantly that the graph was just a solid line. But he kept moving. What is he thinking about? Finn wondered aloud. What keeps him going? If they could have heard Danny's thoughts, they would have been disappointed. He wasn't thinking about honor or glory or proving humanity's worth. He was thinking about dinner. Specifically, he was trying to remember if there was any leftover pizza in the station cafeteria, or if he'd have to settle for whatever the alien food dispensers called nutritionally complete. Pain and exhaustion had pushed his brain into a strange state where complex thoughts were impossible, but simple ones became very important. Pizza, water, a shower. Maybe find out if his ankle was actually broken or just really, really angry at him. The obstacles continued. Walls that heated up when touched. Floors that gave electric shocks. Bars that swung at head height with perfect timing to catch anyone not paying complete attention. Danny ducked, jumped, climbed, fell, got up, and kept going. His movements were getting sloppy, his reactions slower. Several times he only avoided serious injury through dumb luck. But he avoided it. The section was 200 meters long. Danny was at 150. The exit was visible now, a door marked with the symbol for completion. He never seen anything more beautiful. Between him and that door was the final obstacle. The one that had ended every previous attempt at a straight sprint across a 100-meter track. Simple except for 3 things. First, the gravity was set to 4 times normal. Second, impact drones flew along the track, firing training rounds with enough force to bruise bone. Third, the whole track was angled slightly upward, ending in a pool of water kept at near freezing temperature. Previous attempts had lasted an average of 15 meters before collapse. Danny looked at the track, then at his body. His hands were destroyed. His ankle was swelling inside his boot. His ribs hurt with every breath. His entire body was shaking from exhaustion, pain, and sensory overload. He started running 0.4 times gravity, made each step a fight. His legs, already pushed past their limits, nearly buckled with the first stride. The impact drones opened fire immediately. Hard rubber rounds slammed into his shoulders, his back, his legs. He kept running 0.50 meters. His vision was narrowing, darkness creeping in from the edges. That was bad. That was his body trying to shut down. He forced air into his lungs, forced his legs to keep pumping. The drones increased their fire rate. A round caught him in the back of the head, making stars explode across his vision. He stumbled, but didn't fall. 75 meters. The cold water was right there. So close. His legs were pure pain. His breathing was desperate gasps. His heart was hammering so hard he could feel in his teeth point when the drones swooped low, firing 3 times in quick succession. The rounds hit his chest, his stomach, his thigh. Each impact was a small explosion of pain. Danny's body finally made a decision without consulting his brain. It decided it was done. His legs gave out. He fell forward, gravity and momentum carrying him the last few meters. He hit the water face first, the cold shocking every nerve, ending he had left. The water was deep enough to break his fall, cold enough to steal his breath, that he surfaced, gasping, flailing toward the edge. His hands found the rim of the pool. He pulled himself out with the last bit of strength he possessed and collapsed on the floor beyond. The exit door was 3 meters away. Danny lay there, his chest heaving, water and sweat making puddles around him. Everything hurt. Everything. He tried to catalog the pains and gave up after counting past 20. The door was right there. Just 3 meters. He could crawl that far that he crawled. His hands left wet, bloody prints on the floor. His ankle screamed with every movement. His vision was still doing strange things, the after effects of the sensory overload mixing with exhaustion and possibly a concussion that he reached the door. Reached up, hit the completion button. The door opened. Normal corridor light flooded in. Quiet, calm, safe. Danny Wright dragged himself through the door and lay there on the other side, staring at the ceiling, his body completely done with everything. From speakers built into the walls, an automated voice announced, Class Alpha X complete. Time, 47 minutes, 13 seconds. New course record. Danny heard the words, but didn't really process them. He was too busy enjoying the simple pleasure of lying still in normal gravity while nothing tried to hurt him. His hands were ruined. His ankle might be broken. His body was a disaster zone, but he'd finished, and he'd never have to do that again. At least, that's what he thought. The medical team arrived within seconds, their scanners already active before they reached Danny's body. He was still lying exactly where he'd collapsed, staring at the ceiling, his chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. A Threx medic, different from the one who'd quit the course, knelt beside him, running a portable scanner over his torso. Don't move. We need to assess internal damage. I'm good, Danny said, his voice hoarse. You are absolutely not good. Your vitals are. The medic stopped, staring at the scanner display. That can't be right. A Mistral medical specialist drifted closer, her glow shifting to confused purple. She ran her own scanner. The readings matched. Heart rate, elevated but dropping steadily. Blood pressure, high but stabilizing. Core temperature, slightly low from the cold water, already returning to normal. Pain indicators, catastrophically high. Stress hormones, enough to kill most species, but no organ damage. No internal bleeding. No fractures beyond a minor crack in one ankle bone. No neural degradation. No signs of system failure. How? The Threx medic breathed. You should be dying. The pain alone should have caused shock. Danny sat up slowly, wincing at about 100 different points of protest from his body. Can I get some water? And maybe a towel? The medical team exchanged glances. In their combined 300 years of experience, they'd never seen someone complete Class Alpha X. They'd expected to be treating catastrophic trauma or pronouncing death. Instead, they were being asked for water and a towel. They brought him to medical bay anyway. Protocol demanded a full examination. While they worked, news of the completion spread through the station like fire through dry grass. In the observation deck, Instructor Rolf was having an existential crisis. He'd pulled up every scan, every vital reading, every second of footage from Danny's run. The data didn't make sense. The human had suffered. The pain indicators proved that. He'd been pushed to his absolute limits. But those limits were so far beyond what they'd expected that the entire foundation of the course ratings was now in question. Pull up his file, he ordered. Full background check. I want to know everything. The data appeared on his display. Daniel Wright, age 16 standard years. Born and raised in a place called Colorado on Earth. No military training. No genetic modifications. No cybernetic enhancements. Just a normal human child. Employment history showed summer work in something called Death Valley. Climate data loaded automatically. Rolf stared at the temperature readings and felt his stomach drop. Daily highs of 49 degrees Celsius. For 3 months. And a human had worked manual labor in those conditions. Home elevation, 2,100 meters above sea level. Atmospheric oxygen at that altitude, 86% of sea level. The human had spent his entire life breathing thin air. Winter sports listed: skiing, ice fishing, camping. Temperature ranges, -30 to -5 Celsius. Regular exposure. For recreation. Find Earth's classification, Rolf said quietly. Finn pulled up the official galactic database. Category 7. Moderate environment. Standard resource world. No significant hazards beyond basic predator fauna. Pull the raw data. I want actual planetary readings, not the summary. The data loaded. Rolf read it 3 times, certain he was missing something. Gravity, 1.1 standard. Higher than 71% of registered worlds. Temperature range, -89 to 57 Celsius. Wider variance than 89% of inhabited planets. Atmospheric composition, 21% oxygen. The database flagged it in red. Warning, oxygen levels potentially toxic to 63% of known species during extended exposure. Weather patterns, hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, droughts, floods. The list went on. Each phenomenon was marked with hazard warnings. Native life. Apex predators including pack hunters, ambush specialists, and persistence hunters. Microscopic pathogens requiring constant immune system activity. Parasites. Venomous species. The biodiversity included millions of things that could harm or kill. Rolf looked up at Finn. This is a Category 7 world. According to the classification system, yes. The classification system is wrong. This is a death world. Easily Category 3, possibly Category 2. In the medical bay, the examination was complete. The Threx medic was writing his report with shaking hands. Patient shows extreme pain tolerance, likely developed through environmental adaptation. Recommend observation for delayed shock, but prognosis is good. Injuries are superficial despite severity, of course. Danny was sitting on an exam table, his hands wrapped in regenerative bandages, his ankle in a light support brace. Someone had brought him a sandwich. He was eating it with obvious enjoyment, seemingly unconcerned with a dozen medical professionals staring at him like he was an exotic specimen. So, he said between bites, "Is there another course? Like a harder version or something?" The room went silent. "You want to attempt another course?" The Threx medic asked carefully. After that, yeah, that one was pretty fun. Challenging, you know? Good workout. The Mistral specialist pulsed a color that didn't have a name in standard language. It was somewhere between horror and awe. Instructor Rolf arrived at Medical Bay 10 minutes later. He brought a data tablet loaded with questions, assessments, and incident reports that needed filing. He found Danny arguing with the medical staff about whether he needed to stay overnight for observation. "I feel fine, just tired. Can I go get actual dinner now?" "Mr. Wright," Rolf interrupted. "We need to talk." Danny turned, recognized the instructor from the starting area. "Oh, hey, did I do something wrong?" "Wrong? No. Impossible? Yes. I need you to explain how you completed that course." Danny shrugged, then winced as the movement pulled at his burned shoulders. "I just tried hard. I don't know, man. You guys built it, didn't you? It was tough, but not like impossible or anything. It broke 6 Helgram warriors. They train in 4 times gravity from birth. Yeah, but I grew up hiking with a weighted pack. Built up my legs pretty good. It hospitalized a Drachner with 3rd-degree burns. That thermal section was rough. But I worked construction in Death Valley for summer. You learn to handle heat. The oxygen deprivation has caused permanent brain damage in trained soldiers. I'm from Colorado, 7,000 feet up. Thin air is normal for me." Rolf stared at him. Every answer was so simple, so obvious. The human wasn't special. Earth had just been difficult, and he'd lived there. "What do you eat?" Rolf asked suddenly. "On your world?" Food. Is this a weird question?" "What kind of food?" "I don't know. Meat, vegetables, bread. Sometimes pizza." "Why?" Rolf pulled up Earth's cuisine database. The list of potential allergens, toxic compounds that humans consumed regularly, and required nutritional variety was staggering. Capsaicin for flavor. Caffeine for stimulation. Alcohol for recreation. Foods that required processing to remove natural toxins. Humans ate controlled poisons for fun. "We need to reclassify Earth," Rolf said to Finn, who had followed him to medical. Immediately. That night, while Danny slept in station quarters, regular quarters, not medical observation, the Galactic Training Command held an emergency meeting. Representatives from 40 species attended virtually, all demanding to know how a Category 7 softworlder had completed an impossible course. The evidence was presented. The planetary data, the footage, the vitals. The simple explanation from a teenager who thought it was pretty fun. By morning, Earth's classification had been updated, Category 3. Death World. high gravity, extreme climate variance, dangerous fauna, toxic atmosphere to most species. Inhabitants possess exceptional physical resilience and pain tolerance developed through environmental pressure. Recommended military cooperation. High. Recommended colonization. None. Recommended caution when training human candidates. Extreme. Danny woke up to find himself famous. The footage of his run had been sent to training facilities across 12 sectors. Other species wanted to know if all humans were like this, or if he was exceptional. The answer, which bothered everyone, was that he was completely average. Just a kid from a hard world who didn't know that his normal was everyone else's nightmare. And somewhere in the station's planning department, engineers were designing Class Alpha XX. They'd asked if there was a harder course. Danny had no idea what he'd just started. 3 weeks after Danny's run, the station felt different. New protocols were being written. Course difficulty ratings were being recalibrated. And every instructor who'd watched the footage was questioning their understanding of physical limitations. Danny, meanwhile, was trying to figure out why everyone kept staring at him. He walked through the common area toward the cafeteria, his hands mostly healed thanks to alien medical technology, his ankle back to normal. A group of Helgram cadets went quiet as he passed. 2 Drachner scouts actually moved aside, giving him space he didn't need. That IT was weird. IT breakfast. A Quarren fighter named Hollis approached his table. The big alien cleared his throat, all 4 arms shifting nervously. Right. I watched your run. The one you completed. Oh, cool. I attempted Alpha X 2 cycles ago. Made it to Section 3 before the acid marsh destroyed my gear. Hollis gestured at pale scars on his lower arms. I trained for 6 months before that attempt. I am considered a lead among my people. Danny had no idea what to say to that. Sorry about your arms? I want to know your training regimen, your preparation methods. What exercises did you do? What diet? What mental conditioning? I didn't really train. I just showed up. Hollis stared at him. That's impossible. Your species must have superior military conditioning programs. Secret methods. I mean, I was on the wrestling team at school, and I worked some summer jobs. That's about it. The Quarren's face did something complicated. He walked away without another word. This kept happening. Cadets asking for his secrets, instructors requesting interviews, medical staff wanting more scans. Everyone was looking for the trick, the special technique, the hidden advantage. There wasn't one. Danny had just grown up on Earth, and Earth didn't care about fair. I in the command center. Instructor Rolf was presenting his final report to the station director. A floating Mistral named Corrine. She was 300 years old and had seen everything. Or so she'd thought. The human's completion has created a problem, Rolf explained. We designed Class Alpha X to be the ultimate test. Impossible to complete, meant to push cadets to their absolute limits before they quit. It was never intended to be beaten. Corrine pulsed orange. But it was beaten. By a child. By an average human child. We've since reviewed data on Earth's actual environmental conditions. The planet is severely misclassified. It should be Category 3 at minimum. That's a death world rating. Yes, the evidence supports it. High gravity, extreme temperature variance, dangerous fauna, and an atmosphere that's toxic to most species in sustained exposure. Humans evolved in a constantly hostile environment. What we call extreme, they call Tuesday. Kareem was quiet for a long moment. How many other worlds are misclassified? We're reviewing the database now. Preliminary results suggest 47 worlds may need reclassification. Most of them are in the Category 5 to 7 range. Moderate worlds that are actually quite dangerous. And the humans currently serving in galactic forces. Most are assigned to soft duty. Guard positions, administrative roles, light patrol. We've been treating them as fragile because their world was rated Category 7. Recommendations. Rolf pulled up a document he'd been working on for days. First, immediate reclassification of Earth. Second, review all human personnel for potential reassignment to high-intensity roles. Third, completely rebuild our course difficulty assessment system. And fourth, he paused, knowing this one would be controversial. We need to visit Earth, study it directly, Understand how living there creates this level of baseline capability. Kareen pulsed red. Concern. A research expedition to a newly classified death world. The Council will never approve it. The Council needs to understand what they're dealing with. We've been recruiting from Earth for 20 cycles. We have 3,000 humans currently serving across 12 sectors. If they're all even remotely comparable to right, we've been dramatically underutilizing them. Or, Kareen said slowly, we've been very fortunate they're on our side. That hung in the air for a moment. Meanwhile, in the engineering section, a design team was arguing over specifications for Class Alpha XX. The request had come from an unexpected source, Human Military Command. They'd heard about Danny's run and wanted a training course that could actually challenge their people. The gravity sections need to go to 8 times standard, one engineer argued. 4 times didn't even slow him down. 8 times will kill most species. We can't open a course that's immediately fatal to 90% of potential users. Then make it human-specific. A course designed for Deathworlders. We've never built species-specific training before. It goes against the entire philosophy of unified standards. The argument continued, but the conclusion was inevitable. They were going to build it. They had to know if it was even possible to create something that could truly test human limits. Danny knew none of this. He was sitting in his quarters, video chatting with his family back on Earth. His mom was fussing about his injuries, even though he'd assured her he was fine. His dad wanted to know if he'd learned any new skills. His little sister just wanted to show him her new skateboard tricks. "So they're treating you okay up there?" his mom asked. "You're not being bullied or anything?" "No, everyone's really nice, actually. Kind of too nice." "It's weird. Your instructor sent a message," his dad said. "Something about you completing some course." He seemed impressed. "Oh yeah, the training thing. It was pretty hard, but you finished it." "Yeah, it was like a big obstacle course. Reminded me of that time we did the Tough Mudder run, remember? But longer." His parents exchanged glances. They had no idea their son had just done something 47 species considered impossible. To them, he was just their kid, doing okay at some fancy space training program. Maybe that was the real secret. Humans didn't know they were supposed to be weak. They just lived their lives, dealt with their problems, and kept going. Earth made them tough without them even noticing. 2 months later, the research team arrived at Earth. They set up monitoring stations in different climate zones, studied the wildlife, measured environmental variables, and watched humans go about their daily lives. What they found terrified them. Humans jog for recreation in heat that should cause collapse. They climbed mountains that should require oxygen supplements. They swam in water cold enough to induce hypothermia. They ate foods that contained toxins, breathed air that was too rich in oxygen, and lived in gravity that should compress their spines. And they called it normal. A researcher named Pix, a small Threx who'd volunteered for the expedition, filed a report that summarized everyone's feelings. "We have made a terrible mistake. Earth is not Category 3. It might be Category 2, possibly Category 1. The humans are not strong because they trained to be. They are strong because anything less would mean death. Their entire civilization exists in the gap between difficult and fatal, and they think this is fine. Recommend immediate diplomatic priority on maintaining positive relations. These beings are walking weapons who don't realize it." Back on the station, Danny was called to another meeting. He walked in to find Director Kareen, Instructor Rolf, and several high-ranking military officials he didn't recognize. "Mr. Wright," Kareen began, "we have a proposition for you." "Okay, how would you feel about helping us design a new training program? One specifically for human cadets?" Danny thought about it. "Would I have to do more courses?" "Yes." "Would they be harder than Alpha X?" "Significantly harder. We're calling it Class Alpha XX. We need someone to test it, to help us understand what's actually challenging for your species." Danny grinned. The same grin he'd had before jumping into cold lakes, before wrestling matches he might lose, before every difficult thing he'd ever done. "That sounds awesome. When do we start?" The officials looked at each other. The human thought deliberately designed torture sounded awesome. They created something that broke their strongest warriors, and he wanted a harder version. Earth had sent them a boy who thought pain was interesting, difficulty was fun, and impossible was just another word for challenging. They're going to need bigger courses. Much bigger. And somewhere in the galactic database, Earth's classification was quietly updated one more time. Category 2. Extreme Death World. Inhabitants adapted to sustained hostile conditions. Recommend maximum diplomatic cooperation. Under no circumstances